The moment the Indiana Fever reminded the league and themselves that grit and heart can carry a team even when their stars are sidelined. But instead, it turned into a heartbreaking meltdown that left fans frustrated, players exhausted, and a very big question echoing across the WNBA. What the hell is going on with this officiating? Let's set the stage. The Fever were already walking into the game against the Dallas Wings at a disadvantage. Their top 3-point guards, including Caitlin Clark, were out. Injuries had ravaged their backcourt, and Clark, the team's engine, floor general, and emotional compass, was benched with a lingering ankle issue that fans had hoped was minor. But before we dive into the controversy, let's talk about her.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
Because Caitlin's absence, it wasn't just physical, it was emotional. The camera kept panning to her on the sidelines, wrapped in warm-ups, bouncing her leg with nervous energy. She looked every bit like someone who would have traded anything to be out there. And after the game, her injury update, it hit hard. "I wanted to go," Clark said quietly, holding back tears in a post-game media scrum. But the staff made the call, and they were probably right. Still, it hurts to watch and not help. It really hurts. You could feel it. She didn't just want to be there. She needed to. And maybe that's what made everything else sting more. Because the Fever, they gave it everything. No Caitlin. No Christy Wallace. No Erica Wheeler. Just Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, refusing to fold, dragging their team out of a hole, and nearly pulling off the most absurd comeback of the season. Down big going into the fourth, they turned the game on its head. Outscored Dallas 25-4. The Fever went on a rampage, scrappy defense, fast breaks, relentless energy. Boston was anchoring the paint like her life depended on it. Mitchell was doing everything, creating space, knocking down tough shots, taking contact with no whistle in sight. And yet, still, they couldn't get over the hump. And why? Because once again, the referees inserted themselves into the final moments like they were auditioning for a lead role in the drama. The whistle? Inconsistent at best. Unexplainable at worst. Let's talk about that play. Less than a minute to go, and Aaliyah Boston gets absolutely hacked. I mean, full contact. Shoulder, arm, all of it. She powers through, somehow scores. And instead of the and one, offensive foul. The arena? Stunned. Even the commentators couldn't keep quiet. Rebecca Lobo, who never leans into drama, said what everyone was thinking. That just doesn't look like a charge. It looks like she got fouled first. And there it is. That's the theme. Got fouled first. Because it happened to Kelsey Mitchell, too, multiple times. She was getting dragged off the ball like she was on a tug-of-war rope, and the refs? Crickets. Then the same kind of contact happens on the other end. And boom, whistle. Flagrant. Free throws. The double standard wasn't just obvious. It was insulting. And Fever fans? Oh, they were livid. Social media lit up like a forest fire. Hashtags. Slow-motion clips. Frame-by-frame breakdowns. People asking, is this the Caitlin tax? As in, without Clark on the floor to draw eyes and headlines, did the Fever just become invisible? Because let's be honest, Caitlin Clark gets hacked all the time and still doesn't get the call she deserves. So when she's out, and the calls somehow get even worse, that's a system problem, and the timing couldn't be worse. Because the Fever, for all their ups and downs, are fighting for a playoff spot. Every possession matters. Every close game counts. This wasn't just a loss, it was a gut punch, a slide in the standings, a momentum killer. Let's talk about coaching, too. Because, yes, the officiating was garbage. But it wasn't the only problem. Head coach Stephanie White did something that had fans scratching their heads. She didn't call a timeout when she needed to. The Fever were clawing back, had the ball, the game was within one possession, and White let the clock run. No play drawn up, no reset, just chaos. A rush shot, turnover, game over. To her credit, she took some accountability post-game. She admitted she should have called time. She owned that moment. But still, it's becoming a pattern. The Fever are consistently falling apart in final seconds. And that doesn't just fall on the players. That falls on preparation. On leadership, Kelsey Mitchell was left on an island. Aaliyah Boston was trying to do everything from rebounding to rim, protecting to calming the huddle. It was obvious this team misses its point guard. And not just any point guard, Caitlin Clark. Say what you will about the hype, but Clark organizes the offense. She sees the floor in slow motion. She's not just a shooter or a scorer. She's the glue. And when that glue's gone, it shows. The ball movement stalls. The spacing collapses. The decisions get desperate. And yet, even through all that, the Fever nearly pulled it off. They had it within reach. And then the officiating said, "Nope. Let's not ignore the elephant in the room. This is becoming a league-wide problem. Too many games this season have ended not with a buzzer beater, but with fans yelling about officiating. And the WNBA, a league that's begging for mainstream respect, cannot afford to have this be the conversation every other night. When players are consistently asked about referees instead of their performance, that's a problem. When coaches feel like they have to tiptoe around criticism so they don't get fined, that's a problem. When fans are making compilations of missed calls because it's becoming a weekly event, huge problem. And now it's not just about the game against Dallas. It's about trust. Can players trust that the game will be called fairly, regardless of the jersey they wear? Can coaches trust that their late-game decisions won't be undone by a ghost foul? Can fans trust that the league cares about consistency? Right now, the answer's murky. And for Caitlin Clark, this couldn't come at a worse time. Her injury, an ankle tweak that's reportedly being monitored day to day, has thrown a shadow over the Fever's playoff hopes. They need her back. But more importantly, they need her back healthy. Pushing her to return too soon would be reckless. But every game she misses, the Fever fall further behind in a race that's already razor-thin. Her emotional update after the Dallas loss said everything. You could see the frustration behind her eyes, not just because she wasn't on the floor, but because her team fought like hell and still got robbed. And that's the part that hurts the most. They deserved to win. They earned it. They clawed back from double digits. They played with heart. And instead of being rewarded, they got whistled into another loss. So where do we go from here? The league has to look in the mirror. Fast. The officiating standard cannot stay where it is. And the Fever? They've got decisions to make. They can't keep fumbling late-game execution and blaming the refs for everything. The coaching has to get sharper. The rotations tighter. The play calling smarter. And Caitlin Clark? She'll be back. Of course she will. The competitor in her won't stay down for long. But when she does return, the question won't just be, is she healthy? It'll be, will she be protected? Not just from cheap fouls or missed calls, but from the weight of carrying a franchise that desperately needs help. Because no matter how great she is, Caitlin Clark can't save the Fever from broken systems, on the court or off it. But she can demand better. And maybe, just maybe, this latest loss will be the spark that forces change. Until then, the Fever are left with another what if. And fans are left wondering how many more heartbreaks this team can take before something finally gives. And here's the raw truth that no one in the league office seems ready to hear. If something doesn't change fast, Caitlin Clark might stop trusting this league altogether. This isn't just about one rolled ankle and a few bad whistles. It's about the accumulation, the trend, the energy. It's about a rising superstar who's given everything to the game. Her body, her time, her entire college legacy, and now find herself sitting on the sidelines, watching the team she's trying to build get eaten alive by inconsistency, injury mismanagement, and officiating that would make a rec league blush. And yeah, she's trying to stay composed. That post-game media moment, the one where her voice cracked as she admitted how badly she wanted to be out there, that wasn't PR. That was real. That was a competitor caged. Clark's injury might not be season-ending, but it's the kind of tweak that lingers if not handled right. And when you combine that with the pressure of carrying an entire franchise, plus the looming reality that every time she's not on the floor, the team falls apart, it creates an impossible situation. Do you push through the pain and risk long-term damage? Or do you sit, watch your team spiral, and take the heat for not doing enough? It's a lose-lose. And Caitlin? She's stuck in the middle of it. Meanwhile, the Fever's supporting cast is doing everything they can. but they're gassed. You can't expect Kelsey Mitchell to be the floor general, the scorer, and the defensive anchor all at once. You can't expect Aaliyah Boston to bang in the paint for 35 minutes, only to have crucial possessions end in chaos because the ball handler couldn't get the offense set. That's the price you pay when your roster isn't built with real depth. And that's not on the players, it's on the front office. Let's talk about that for a second, because this isn't just a bad week, it's a structural problem. The Fever have had more national TV games than some NBA teams this year. Their viewership is through the roof. Their merch is flying off shelves. Caitlin Clark's jersey, already a historic bestseller. So where is that money going? Because from the outside, it's not going into building a bench, or improving medical support, or hiring more staff. The Fever look like a team still living in the pre-Clark era, despite being gifted the most marketable player women's basketball has ever seen. You'd think that would come with a full rebuild of resources, right? Nope. Just more weight on Clark's shoulders. Just more pressure to fix everything by being superhuman. But here's the thing. Caitlin Clark is not indestructible. She's not a machine. She's a young athlete in her first pro season, dealing with more scrutiny, attention, and responsibility than most vets face in a decade. And now she's injured, emotionally crushed, and watching her team drop winnable games because no one seems to know how to steady the ship without her. And that, right there, is a leadership failure. Not from her, but from everyone around her. Coach Stephanie White has been under the microscope all season, and moments like the Dallas game are exactly why. That missed timeout, that wasn't just a tactical error. It was a failure to give her players a fighting chance. A moment where structure could have saved them from chaos. And she let it pass. The players looked confused, disjointed. The camera cut to the bench. No one stood up. No one yelled for the timeout. And then, turnover. Game. Gone. That's not just bad coaching. That's a team that doesn't trust the system anymore. And when your star player is already injured, that's the worst time for the system to collapse. Let's also not ignore the psychological toll all this is taking. Clark has had her composure tested all year, by opponents taking cheap shots, by fans dissecting her every move, and now, by watching games slip away while she sits on the sideline in a hoodie and sneakers. She's playing the long game. You can tell. She's being careful, protecting her body, listening to the trainers. But you can also see it in her eyes. This is eating her alive. She didn't come here to watch. She came here to change things. And it's not just her. You think Aaliyah Boston signed up for this kind of frustration? She's an all-star, a champion, a winner. And right now, she's being asked to carry the defense, the offense, and the locker room vibes all at once. Boston's frustration is showing more with every game. The non-calls, the post-game interviews where she dances around the truth because she knows saying it outright will cost her. The fact that she can't even blink at a ref without getting a warning, while her opponents hack away like it's street ball. And let's not forget what this does to the team culture. When refs call the game one way for some players and another for others, it breeds resentment. It kills morale. Players stop trusting the process. They start second-guessing their aggression. They pull back. And in a league this tight, that hesitation is the difference between winning and sliding into irrelevance. This loss to Dallas wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a symptom of something bigger. The Fever are in the midst of a crisis, not just of injuries or game plans, but of belief. Belief in leadership, in fairness, in the idea that playing hard, smart basketball will actually lead to wins. Because right now, that's not what's happening. You fight back from a 20-point deficit, claw your way into the lead, do everything right, and then the refs yank the rug out from under you. Then your coach fails to give you the reset you desperately need. Then you watch your playoff hopes inch closer to the danger zone. Again, eventually it's not just physical exhaustion, it's emotional. And that wears on players fast. The only silver lining? The fans haven't left. They were loud. They were furious. They showed up in the comments, in the seats, in the streams. They know what they're seeing, and they're not letting it slide. Because for all the leagues talk about growth and respect, moments like this game remind people that there's still a long way to go. And if the WNBA wants to keep players like Clark and Boston engaged, invested, and committed for the long haul, They have to stop expecting them to carry the league on their backs without giving them the respect and the infrastructure they deserve. Caitlin Clark's injury update may have sounded hopeful, but the truth behind her words was heavy. It wasn't just about her ankle. It was about the weight she's been carrying all season. She's doing everything right. She's showing up. She's trying to lead. And now, she's watching it all fall apart while she heals. The question is, will the league, the refs, and her own team step up while she's down? Because if not, this isn't just a minor setback. It's the beginning of a very dangerous unraveling. And for the Indiana Fever, and for the WNBA as a whole, that's the real injury no one's talking about. What makes this all the more dramatic, tragic even, is that this wasn't how the Caitlin Clark era was supposed to begin. Not like this. Not with her sitting at the end of the bench, eyes fixed on the floor, visibly restraining every competitive instinct while the team she was brought in to revolutionize falls apart without her. Let's rewind just a few months. The draft, the buzz, the sold-out arenas, the league practically rebranding itself around her. She was the spark, the headline, the lightning bolt the WNBA had been waiting for. The assumption? She'd come in, and everything would rise with her. Attendance, ratings, team chemistry, and most importantly, wins. But the reality? It's been brutal. Not because she's not living up to the hype. She's been everything they hoped for. The numbers, the playmaking, the poise, the leadership, it's all there. But the foundation underneath her? Shaky at best. And now, as her body forces her to take a breather, the cracks are fully exposed. The Indiana Fever weren't ready. Not for the pressure, not for the attention, and definitely not for the long haul. And it's not just about Clark. Her injury has become a symbol of the larger dysfunction. Because every day she's out, we're reminded just how thin this team is, how dependent they're on one player to hold the whole thing together. No other team in the playoff conversation is this fragile. That's not a knock on the rest of the roster. They're talented. They're trying. But the truth is, they were never built to succeed without Caitlin. There's no real point guard depth. The offense grinds to a halt without her ability to create. The floor spacing collapses. The turnovers pile up. And what started as she makes everyone better now looks more like, without her, we're lost. And that is the problem. Because what this tells us, loudly, is that Indiana didn't build a team around Caitlin Clark. They built a spotlight. One giant, blazing spotlight, hoping it would distract from every missing piece. They thought she'd be enough. Enough to fix the culture. Enough to cover the front office's lack of vision. Enough to drag the team to the playoffs while simultaneously saving the league's national profile. But now, with one ankle tweak and a couple days of rest, that whole fantasy is unraveling. And it's not just Indiana feeling the heat. The entire league is being forced to reckon with this. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just an athlete. She's the most valuable asset in professional women's sports right now. Period. She's already generating revenue, merchandise sales, and media exposure that teams have never seen before. She's not just a player. She's a franchise unto herself. So when she's sidelined, that's not just a team problem. That's a league crisis. Because she's the one on the billboards. The face on every game poster. The reason ESPN suddenly remembers to mention the WNBA during SportsCenter. And when she's not playing, when fans tune in to see her and she's icing her ankle in a hoodie, it changes the energy. Now let's get into something that hasn't been talked about enough. The medical care and load management surrounding Clark. Why was she logging heavy minutes every night, even in blowouts? Why was she on the floor in the fourth quarter of 20-point games when she was clearly banged up? Why were there no signs of precaution when it was obvious she was fatigued? This is a player who played 4 grueling college seasons, took 0 time off between the NCAA tournament and the draft, and jumped immediately into pro ball with no adjustment period. That's a recipe for burnout, and someone should have protected her, whether it was the coaching staff, the front office, or the league itself. Someone should have pulled her aside and said, "Hey, we're building a career here, not just chasing a viral highlight reel." But they didn't. They let her run. They let her push. And now she's sidelined with an injury that might have been avoidable with proper rest and management. This isn't about fragility, it's about responsibility. Because Clark will never be the one to take a step back. She's a competitor. She'll tape it up and play until her legs fall off if you let her. But that's why someone else has to step in. Someone has to be the adult in the room. And right now, the Fever don't seem to have one. Meanwhile, other players across the league are watching this unfold. Quietly, some support her. Some are frustrated by the media obsession. But all of them are paying attention to how she's treated, not just by opponents, but by her own organization. Because how you treat your stars, especially when they're vulnerable, matters. And for players like Aya Wilson, Breanna Stewart, Jewel Lloyd, and others who've carried the league for years, watching Caitlin Clark be tossed into the chaos with no safety net, it sends a message they're not protecting her. And if they won't protect her, what makes anyone think they'll protect you? That's a culture issue, and it's one the WNBA can't afford to ignore. Not now. Not when they finally have a spotlight big enough to make change stick. They need to ask the hard questions. Why are so many teams struggling with roster depth? Why do injuries derail entire franchises in a league this small? Why aren't medical staffs and resources standardized across the board? Why is one player being asked to carry the entire narrative of the season? Caitlin Clark's injury should be a wake-up call, not just for the Fever, but for every single team still operating like this league is a side project. Because it's not. Not anymore. The fans are here. The money is here. The moment is here. Now the infrastructure needs to catch up. We need deeper benches. We need stronger coaching. We need fairer officiating. We need smarter load management. And most of all, we need to protect the players who are changing the game. Because if we don't, we risk losing them. Not just to injury, but to exhaustion, to disillusionment, to burnout. And Caitlin Clark deserves so much more than that. She deserves a team that can function without her. A league that sees her as more than a ratings boost. A fan base that gets to watch her grow without flinching every time she hits the floor hard. Right now, we're not there, but we could be if the Fever, the WNBA, and everyone in between wakes up and realizes this isn't just about one injury. It's about everything around it. And if they don't fix it, it won't be just Clark sitting out. It'll be the entire future of the league on the sideline, wondering what could have been.